Hello again there folks, Lone Adventurer here. Thanks very much for stumbling your way upon my channel and joining me on another adventure. And today I'm going to be taking a look at and playing through a game called Die in a Dungeon from RollinKunz. Now, Rollin is an artist and game designer who I have been aware of for quite some time now. I've followed Rollin on Instagram for a few years, I guess, at this point, and I've always liked his distinctive art style. I'm not sure how I would describe it. It's almost impressionistic, with the monsters and locations and bits and pieces looking like they have been cut out and carved out of darkness. So his art really plays on light and shadow. Let's take a quick look here, just at the very top, at some of the art here, some of Rollin's art. This is the Lich here, and we've got some ferals and some skeletons. And Die in a Dungeon is probably Rollin's most ambitious project to date. It's his first game that is solo first, I guess. Die in a Dungeon can be played 1 or 2 player, hence having 2 starting decks here. I'm going to take the player 2 deck and pop it to one side because obviously we will not be using that today. And before I go any further, I should point out that this is a game that is going to be on Kickstarter very soon, or will likely be on Kickstarter around the same time as this video is released, roughly. So there will be a link in the description below. Click on that and you can either follow along or consider backing the game if it looks like the sort of thing that you might like. And if you find yourself enjoying the sort of games that I tend to cover on this channel, my suspicion is this is a game that you might like. So with that said, I'm going to take a little bit of a look at the components of this game. I'm going to try and give you a rough sense of how it plays, and then we are going to set up a game and I'm going to have a playthrough. So if you want to jump directly to the playthrough bits, there will be timestamps on this video, so you can find the links in the description below. So let's have a little chat about it. So one of Rollin's other projects that I have always liked the look of, and I have found very, very appealing, is these cards here. Now, I'm not sure how many packs of these cards exist, but here we've got 2. And these are the Dungenerator decks. So we're going to be playing with this one, the Season 1 deck, the Series 1 deck. So let's have a look at the Series 2 deck. So these cards are used to generate a random dungeon, and all of the artwork has been done by Rollin, and it is very indicative of his particular style. And you can see that these cards, many of them have points of interest on and interesting details that might be used in solo play or any kind of, any kind of game where you're generating a random location, regardless of how many players you might have. And you can see that we've got a particular format of iconography on these cards. And that's because they are used in a particular way. Now, I'm not going to go into how the Dungenerator decks are used independently, because today what we're going to be doing is using one of these decks in order to support Die in a Dungeon. Because that's one of the interesting things about this game. Rollin has taken the Dungenerator decks, which already existed, and he's built a system that works with them. So if you choose to back this game on Kickstarter, you would also need to acquire a Dungenerator deck, which I am almost certain will be possible as part of some of the pledges, at least on Kickstarter. So there we go, that's one of the Dungenerator decks. They are super cool. I'm really glad that I've finally got a couple of them. Rollin very kindly sent me this version of the game here, which is a prototype, although my understanding is that it's very, very close to the complete game. And when he sent me the prototype, he also sent me a couple of these decks of cards. So to be able to add this to my collection is a massive bonus. So the way it works is you will have a village. Outside of the village is discovered an entrance to a dungeon, or a series of entrances to a dungeon, and you will send in a party of heroes into that dungeon in order to kill the boss. Now, this is not a game that can be played in a single sitting. It needs to be played over a series of sessions, and over the course of that series of sessions you will add additional buildings to your village, and those additional buildings will increase the likelihood that you are able to get closer to defeating the boss, and you will also improve your deck in a number of ways. Because one of the mechanics that is central to this game is deck building. And I'm not sure that I have played a deck building game on the channel before. Feel free to correct me, I've covered a lot of games now, but I don't think I've covered one. And over here at the Lone Adventurer Castle, we are big fans of deck builder games. Some of the games that we have played the most are deck builder games. And I'm just looking up at my game collection, and I can see we've got a lot of Eon's End, which is a deck building game. We've got some Astro Knights, which is a re-implementation of Eon's End. We've got the Star Wars deck builder. We've got Star Realms and the fantasy version of that game, which we haven't actually played yet, but those are all deck builders. We've got some Marvel Legendary deck building games. So I like deck building games, but I've never had a chance to really cover one, and deck building is quite important in this game. So you have a starting set of cards. You cycle through those cards, you use them each round of play, and there are various ways that you can improve that deck so that next time you sit down and take a new generation of heroes into the dungeon, you'll be a little better placed to pushing slightly further ahead. Okay, so we've got our Dungenerator cards, we've got our deck building, and the other thing that's quite interesting about this game is that your party of heroes are represented by the dice. So each die is one of your heroes. So the D4 is an outlaw, elusive rapscallion, always on the lookout for treasure. Your D6 is a scout who finds the quickest routes through any terrain. Your D8 is a mercenary, hardened warrior who knows how to take a hit. Your D10 is an archmage who uses their arcane expertise to surprise the enemy. The D12 is a warrior priest who makes sure their comrades are fighting fit. And the D20 is a berserker, big, brutal and hardy. So as you are placing, let's get the deck out that we're going to be using here. As you are placing your location cards here, as you are building your dungeon, like so, as your dungeon is developing, you're going to be moving your characters through that location represented by the dice. So if this was how we were at the moment, then our warrior priest and our mercenary are in this location, And then all on his own here, we've got our Archmage, and then the rest of the party are here. And the value on the dice represents the current strength, I guess, of those heroes. So in some situations, higher numbers are good, and in other situations, lower numbers are good. So there we go. We've also got some loot cards here. In the loot deck, we will have the occasional trap. It's worth pointing out also that we will always be drawing from the bottom of the deck, so we will never know what is going to come. And that's important because almost all of these cards, if not all of them, are double-sided. So there's no sort of like back of the card. So there's no mystery that way. You have to have the mystery by drawing from the bottom, because all the cards have stuff on both sides. So we've got a loot deck with some traps in. We've got our village deck here. We've got our quests, monsters, along with one boss monster, a few items of gear, and a lovely big chunk of hero-specific quests, I guess you would call them. Because as you are playing, you are going to be trying and completing village quests. And in fact, when you complete a village quest, the game that you are currently playing ends. There's a number of ways that a game can end. I will run through them all in a moment. In addition to village quests, you have these hero quests. When you complete a hero quest, you turn it over and you get an additional action that you can put in your action deck. And that's one of the ways that you're going to start to add variety to the cards that you have. Because the only cards you start with are a basic move, which allow you to move from place to place, a prepare, that allows you to re-roll your character dice, your hero dice, if you are not happy with their current value, a battle that allows you to fight enemies that you find, and a search that allows you to place loot cards in the dungeon for you to then pick up. So in addition to those cards, you can add in these action cards if you are able to complete these hero-specific quests. You can add in those. You can also add into your deck some gear cards, and you can also add in some loot cards. So when a loot card appears, you can use it in a couple of ways. One of the ways you can use it is to flip the card over, and then you find an item of loot. In this example, it's a potion of speed, and then you can pop that potion of speed into your deck or into your discard pile that will ultimately go into your deck, and then that's something you can start to use as you're playing. The one final way that I can think of right now that you can improve your deck is to, train. At the end of each game that you play, you can improve one of your basic actions. And I've already played a game of this just before I recorded this video. So I have already improved my prepare action. And the way you can see that I've done that is through these icons up here. When you first start playing, this little sun icon will be facing up on all of the cards in play. And it's only through various actions that happen over the course of the game that those cards might get flipped to the other side. So this card here is the ability that I trained in. So you can see it says trained action now. And so going forward, every game that we play, this card, the prepare card, is going to be better. Because when you flip it from the basic action to the trained action, you get to do sort of a better version of that card. So when we first come to do a prepare action, I'll explain obviously how it works, but I'll also explain what the basic action is as well, so you can see why I chose to improve that action. With that said, I think it's probably time that I had a go at setting this up so that we can see what it looks like set up, and then we can start running through a game. I'm going to have to move the camera a little bit further away. Sorry about that, just had to bring it into focus. I'm going to have to move the camera a little bit further away from the table because as our dungeon evolves, it will take up a bit more room. So you can be a bit further away, but I will bring lots of cards up close to the camera so that you can see what everything looks like. Okay, I've got most of the cards off to one side so that we have a nice big chunk of space here to play. I've got our deck down here and our heroes to one side for the time being. We've got the monsters over there. We've got the village cards here. I foolishly thought that the village cards were missing when Roland first sent me the game, and I didn't quite process that you run through this setup and then whenever you finish a card you flip it over and there's one of your village cards. So we're going to run through setup together. It doesn't take very long and then we will be ready to play. I've only got a digital version of the rulebook, but I'm going to read the little introductory text for us now. Far away on a long-lost continent lies a constantly shifting, possibly unending labyrinth of a dungeon. Nestled near that dungeon is a humble village full of brave souls attempting to eke out a living, providing for ambitious explorers and noble adventurers, and subsisting on the riches and resources they manage to plumb from the dungeon's depths. Every era a terrible evil pours from the dungeon and razes the village and its surrounding lands. These lands remain devoid of life until the evil falls dormant once more and new brave souls arrive. You, great sage, are called upon to lead bands of adventuring heroes to push back this tide of evil and preserve the village for all time. You'll either succeed or die in a dungeon. So before we go any further, let me just review how you win or lose. You will win if you complete a village quest, and we will be choosing a couple of these village quests for this game in a bit. You'll also win if we defeat the boss monster, the Lich, in this particular instance. He's off to one side for the time being because it's unlikely that on our second game, because remember I have played through this already, it's unlikely that on our second game we will defeat the Lich. So he's over there. We will lose if all the village buildings are damaged. So each of the village buildings can be damaged by monsters if we're unable to stop them from flooding out of the dungeon. And we'll be flipping the village cards like that when they're damaged, and if that happens to all of them, then we lose. We will also lose if monsters can't spawn, and we'll talk about how monsters spawn in a bit, but if you've got too many monsters going on, if you haven't kept them under control, there'll be no room for them to spawn and we will lose, and obviously we will lose if all our heroes become killed. So you kind of think of your heroes in a generational sense. If they all die in this game, then you can start another game and a new set of heroes can face the dangers of the dungeon. So let's go through setup. So first of all, we're going to designate a village square area. That's going to be over here on the left. We're going to place the 4 quick setup cards and any building cards in your building deck adjacent to the village square. So we've already got one. We've got this junkyard, which I acquired by completing a mission in the first game that I did off screen. We're going to roll all 6 of our dice and place them in the village square. So this is to establish the initial value of our heroes. So there we go. I'm going to pop them down here, maybe a bit lower. The D4 is on 3 because you can't see that, can you? These are pretty high values actually. Was that a 3 or a 5? I think I might have just knocked that. We'll leave it on a 3. And then shuffle the village quest cards and draw 2 and place them near the village. Okay, so we've got the village quest cards here. We're going to get 2 quests. There we go. Those are our 2 quests. And remember, if we complete one of those quests, then we win the game. We'll come back to those in a second. Let's just finish setup. So that's our building the town hall. We've got a junkyard, we've got a town hall. On to setup B. Remove any dungeon rooms. This is preparation of the dungeon deck, so I've done this already. Remove any dungeon rooms without a dead end on the back and set them aside. In fact, maybe I should just check that. Yeah, these have all got that X on the back. Except, right, okay, yeah, so we need to remove these ones. These are treasure rooms, and they're going to be sort of distributed evenly through the deck. So we're going to split our Dungenerator deck into roughly 4 piles. There we go. We're going to put a treasure card in each. We're going to give, steady. We're going to give each a little shuffle so we don't know exactly where it is, but there it was again. And then we're just going to pile those up to form our deck, and we'll know that there's a treasure location card roughly in every quarter of the deck. Then we're going to place one entrance card adjacent to the village square with its open passage pointing away. We can flip that over and we've got our temple. And actually, I might move those off camera as well. Those are our baddies, our enemies. I'm just trying to maximise the amount of space that we've got here. Yeah, we might move the quests. I'll tell you what, I will poke the quests off a little bit like that. We'll come back to those in a sec. Like I said, on to C. Prepare the other decks. Place the dungeon deck X side down on the edge of the table. We've done that over there. Shuffle the traps into the loot deck. I'll give the loot an extra shuffle in a second. And then shuffle the other decks and make sure they're all sunny side up. And they are. We've set the boss monster aside. So there's our cemetery. And then final setup. Each player shuffles their action deck. Places the deck cover on top. So actually let's do that. Let's give this an extra shuffle. Because I was kind of conscious actually when we flipped through it that all the move cards were together. So I'm now looking away from the deck because I don't want to know exactly what we're doing here. And then we'll pop the deck cover on top. So actually you probably know more than I do right now about what's in there. Pop that down there. And yeah, then we draw 5 cards. Then we begin. So we can flip that over and we've got our tavern. Then we're going to draw 5 cards from the bottom. And that is our starting hand. So we've actually got a lot of moves. We've got 4 moves and we've got a battle, which we're not going to be able to use because there won't be any enemies at the start. Right, we have got 4 dungeon starting cards. So we'll put the first one there, I think, nice and close to our village. It doesn't really matter where we put it. We could put it down here, we could put it over here, and we probably will end up placing another one somewhere else at some point. We've got 4 in total. We can theoretically use all 4. And what next? We've got our cards. I suppose we should have a quick look at our quests, a quick look at the village cards before we make a start. So here's our quests. We've got Treacherous Trail and we've got Bandit Blockade. So for Treacherous Trail, the quest, you may discard killed monsters onto this card. So to complete this, we need to put monsters that we have killed onto this card. And we need, by the looks of it, 3 of that type of monster. I think that means undead. I'm not 100% sure, but it's a type of monster. And then if we do that, then we complete the quest. So that's a fairly easy, low-level quest. And Bandit Blockade, it's very similar. It's all about defeating monsters. So you may discard killed monsters of that type, and if we get 3 on here, then the quest is complete and the game ends. So we'll only get to complete 1 of these quests in the course of the game. And then when we do, part of our reward is flipping the quest over and getting the village card that is on the other side. But we're not going to look at those right now. But what we will do is look at the actual village cards. So let's grab all of those and have a quick look through their abilities. Now if you've got at least one hero in the village, because remember they'll be moving over into the dungeon, but you can leave them in the village or you can return them to the village at any point that you want to. And if you've got someone in the village, you can do one of these actions. This symbol here means you have to have a hero in that location in order to do that action. So you have to have a hero in the village in order to do this. You would discard a card and then you can carouse. Is that how you pronounce that word? Carouse? 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 And this allows you to sort of cycle through your hand basically. If you haven't got cards that you want for that particular round, you can go carousing. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right. And you discard all the cards in your hand and then draw new cards. So the tavern's quite useful. The temple allows you to resurrect a hero that has died. I'm not sure I've done that yet, but if we found ourselves having to do that, we'll take a closer look at that. The cemetery is where you place heroes who have been killed. So no action associated with that. The junkyard is our new specialist building, so this is not one of the starting buildings. In the last game I completed the scrap heap quest, and as a result of that I got myself a new building. So this gives me a barter action. I think that symbol means that it's time sensitive, or no, let me have a look, let me just double check what that symbol means. So that means it's an ongoing effect. So this isn't a card that we have to action, it just adds this effect to our game. Players can return gear cards in their hand in order to pay a certain cost. So that's something we'll get to, but that could definitely be quite handy. We've got our town hall where we can discard 2 cards or a loot card, I think that is. Yeah, a loot card. And then we can gossip. It means we can draw a hero quest and place it onto a dead end. So we can draw a hero quest from this deck of hero quests here, place it into the dungeon, and all of a sudden we have an additional objective that might gain us new actions in a future playthrough. So if we completed the light-footed lookout quest, then we flip it over and we get this new scout action. So that's the town hall, and that's all the buildings. So I'll pop those back and then we will make a start. So we've got our heroes in the village. We have got our hand of cards and we are ready to go. We're going to start off with a move action. So when you move, you select a single character, a single hero to move into the dungeon. And I think I'm going to start with my war priest, who's on a fairly healthy 9. That would be quite good for dealing with any enemies that they encounter. The move card is going to be put on a discard deck. We'll pop that over there for the time being. Now, when a character moves into a location that has unexplored exits, you then place cards to represent those directions. So we're going to grab a card from the bottom of our Dungenerator deck. All of these cards have a directional arrow on, and that arrow will point in the direction of the exit of our dungeon. So that is going to go there. And if at any point we can't place a card because it would overlap the space that we have laid out to play the game in, then that becomes a dead end. So if somehow that card there was in a situation where placing it would hang off the edge of the desk, for example, we would flip it over and it would become a dead end. How clever is that? Just a really nice, simple mechanic for a card-based dungeon kit like this. But there we go. We don't need to do it on this occasion. We've got a new location. And we could, and I think we will. It's quite nice that there's 3 exits off this. That hasn't happened to me too many times yet. So we will, I think, do another move we're going to move our mercenary into that location. So when you move, you can move through any number of locations as one move action. The only way that that is not the case is if there are enemies in some of those locations, and we'll talk about how that affects things when it happens. But our mercenary is going to move there, and all of a sudden we have 3 new locations that we need to explore. So we're going to grab these from the bottom of the dungeon deck. Got that one there. And notice the arrows are always going to be pointing towards the exit. There we go. Already we've got quite an elaborate little dungeon set up here. The last one I played ended up quite linear compared to this. But that's good, because that means that we've got lots of places for enemies to appear. You don't want your enemies to get too clogged up. And we've got lots of places that might become dead ends where we might find quests or treasure. So we could keep moving, but actually I don't really feel the urge. Do you know what? I might move. I might use one more move card to move. Let's say. No, let's do the berserker. You might as well have your berserker out there somewhere. So we'll move the berserker into that location there. And obviously we've got no one to battle, and I'm not going to use my final move. In fact, I'm going to discard my final move. So once you've done all of your actions, in fact, let's flip this over. We've got a turn order on the back. This card here, your deck topper, or whatever it's called, on one side you've got a little description of all of your characters, and then on the other side, which will actually keep face up, we've got a turn order. So we've done the first one where we play actions from the cards in your hand. Then you can choose to keep or discard any remaining cards. We're about to do that. Then you draw back up to 5, and then you do some monster stuff. So we're going to, as part of part 2 of the turn, we're going to choose to discard that. We're going to keep the battle card though, because that could be quite useful. We're going to draw back up to 5. And then we've got to do a monster action. So I'm just going to give the monsters a little shuffle under the table, because I don't think I've shuffled them since I last played. As with all of the decks, we'll be drawing from the bottom of this. Notice that all the cards are sunny side up when we start. Pop that over there. I just remembered I said I was going to shuffle the loot deck as well. So I'm just going to give the loot deck a quick shuffle. And then we need a monster. So we're going to draw the monster from the bottom. We've got some zombies. Let's have a quick look at that card before we place it. So we've got an enemy type. It's a minion. We've got this number here, which I believe is a, an initiative number. So that dictates the order in which they act if there's multiple enemies in play. Then we've got some actions that will be triggered when the monster acts. We've got a little target there that dictates whether your characters are able to sneak past them, and a higher number means they are easier to sneak past. And then we've got some battle conditions. So in order to battle this enemy, we would need 3 heroes of values at or higher than 5, 2 and 2. Is it at or higher? I'll double check that in a second. And then what happens if you win? And if you win, you have to flip this card over. So this is an enemy that you have to defeat twice, essentially, as most of the enemies are that I've encountered so far. So the first time you battle them, if you are successful, you flip it over, and then you have to defeat it again in order to finally defeat the enemy. So we've got our zombies. Where are they going to go? Well, they will appear where there is an unexplored entrance to a card. So they could appear here, they could appear here, and they could appear here. I'm not sure how we're supposed to sort of decide that. I think I'll put them here. So this zombie is now in this card here. And that's the end of the go, the end of the round. So I think we'll do one more round, and then we'll have a little pause, and I'll finish this up in a second video. So in our second round, we're going to look at our cards that we've got. We've got some different ones here. We've got our move again, and we've got our battle again. So we've got 2 battles. we could theoretically undertake 2 battles, 1 move, so probably not going to be doing any battling. I'll explain that in a second. We've got a search, so we can search if we're in a dead end or a treasure room. I don't think we've got a treasure room yet, and we haven't got a dead end, so we can't do that. And we've got a prepare that allows us to roll some of our heroes if we don't like the values of their dice at the moment. So to be perfectly honest, there's not a huge amount we can do. So the question is, do I start moving the heroes into this space here so that they're ready for the zombies? However, and we haven't got to how enemies work entirely yet, but if we place another enemy of that type, these zombies will lurch towards the exit of the dungeon, towards the village. So if that happens, they would be lurching directly into our heroes, which is actually where we want them to be. So I'm tempted to take a gamble that the next enemy is of the same type as the zombies, and we're going to move this fella, I always forget who's who, this one here, who is the warrior priest, into here. So we've got 3 heroes, because the zombies require 3 heroes to defeat them. Obviously we're not going to battle because we don't have anyone in a location with an enemy yet. Yeah, I'm not sure I want to prepare really. Maybe I will. I mean, it's not much, but my archmage over here, who is represented by a D10, is only on 3. So I might use the prepare to roll the archmage. So the prepare allows you to roll any number of dice in a single location to get a new value. So I don't mind these values. 6 is good and 3 is good, but I'm going to re-roll this one and get exactly the same again. Okay, worth a try. And that's it really. I think we're then going to discard a battle card. I think we're going to discard the search as well. We're going to draw back up to 10. Now I've run out of cards in my action deck, so I'm just shuffling what I've got under the table. I just remembered I've got the different version of prepare, haven't I? I was just checking to see, because last time I played I was using the basic side of prepare. Now we've flipped to the trained side. Let me quickly show you the difference. I was wondering whether that would adjust what I wanted to do right now, but actually it doesn't. The basic side, roll any number of heroes in a single room, then discard this card. Oop. The other side, the trained side, roll any number of heroes in a single room. We can then discard another card from our hand to do the action again. So if we didn't like the numbers that we rolled to, and actually I could have done that, couldn't I? But now I've faffed around, I'm not going to. So you get to do it twice if you want. And also you can discard this card to draw another. So I could have done that instead as well, if I was thinking, but I wasn't really. So this is our deck. We're going to shuffle that. Basically, I could have done that better then, but I didn't. Never mind. And then we're going to draw back up to 5. And then we're going to, at the end of our round, our turn, we are going to have to draw another monster card and place it. And this is, as predicted, also of that type, which means when we place the ooze, remember the new monster will appear either here or here. It's going to appear here. And that monster appearing activates the other monsters with the same symbol. So this monster is now going to act. And if we look at the 2 actions, we've got one action that occurs if they're in a location with no enemies. If they're in a location with no enemies, they're going to lurch, move 1 towards the nearest hero. Ah, that's interesting. So they don't move towards the exit, they move towards the nearest hero. And then if they were in a location with an enemy, with one of their enemies, with one of us, they would attack. Now they're not at the moment in a location with our heroes. If they had been in this location, they would then immediately attack, but that's not happening. They're going to lurch towards us. Now at this point, you have to wonder, where are you going to place this card so that it's clear where they are? I'm going to move that over here, and then I'm going to place this here. And the little sunshine symbol sort of has an arrow at the bottom of it. And I'm going to point that arrow towards the location where they are at. This one here, it's clear that it's going to be there because that's sort of, the card is close to that location card. This one here is a bit more ambiguous, so I'm going to point it towards that location. And that's the end of the round. We've got a new hand of cards ready to go. We've got 3 heroes in a location with an enemy, so we're going to be ready to battle in our next turn. And yeah, that's where we're at with Die in a Dungeon. Hope you enjoyed that, folks. Remember to go and follow along or check out the Kickstarter. The link is in the description below. And if you want to see how it plays out, join me in the next video. I'll make sure there's a link in the description below to that as well. And we will continue and see how our party get on against the ooze and the zombies. Thanks very much for watching, folks. Catch you in the next one. Bye for now.